Thank you, Paul, very much for jumping on a Zoom call with Ryan and I. I am Lindsay Ehrlicher Stiles.
And I'm Ryan Stiles.
And we are the Ehrlicher Stiles Group. And we have our good friend and owner of Gestalt Group, Paul Benson, on the call with us. Paul, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure, happy to. First of all, thanks for including me. Very much appreciate it. I think that this, for me, is a great example of what we are kind of going around the country right now, talking to each other about doing, reinventing and changing our paradigm of what's important and how we communicate. And so, to me, I'm really excited to be part of this because I think it's a great exhibit of something that we should be doing more of. So my hat's off to you guys. It's great.
Thank you.
So for me, yes, I'm the CEO and owner of, I guess we have 32 offices now, from Bend, Oregon, all the way down to Scottsdale and up and down the California coast, and headquartered in Park City. I'm also a real estate agent in Park City, Utah, and pretty regularly in at least the top 3, and have been top in the state 10 of the last 12 years, I guess.
Wow.
Just a little accomplished.
Yeah. No, I started Engle Völkers, frankly, because of what it has become. Before Engle Völkers, we were unable to really connect the offices. So I was in little old Park City, Utah, and all of my clients were coming from places like California and Texas, New York. And the brand did not support the collaboration in between the offices and the way I thought maybe we could. And so the original idea was to try to open a couple offices, literally a couple, in our key feeder market areas where I knew agents and we could kind of do business back and forth. And yes, it blew up into something amazing. And, I met this great, amazing couple in wine country about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was.
3 now.
And somehow I got talked into opening in wine country. And here we are now, thanks to Ryan and Lindsay. With 4 offices in wine country, and approximately, I think the last count I saw was about 83 agents in wine country. So I thank you guys for being part of that network that has grown to what it is today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're so honored to be a part of this amazing company for many reasons. You are one of those major reasons that we are here. So when we thought about, let's do a Zoom call, let's chat with Paul Benson, because he is one of our favorites. You are in the top 1% of global advisors for our company. And that actually brings me to something that I wanted to chat with you about. You are part of a very elite group of people in our company called Private Office. So I'm curious, how are you guys in Private Office supporting one another? What are some things being said? What's going on? Tell us what you guys are faced with and dealing with right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so Private Office for Engle Völkers is a combination between agents that have done significant amounts of business for a minimum amount of years, 7 figures of income on an average, generally speaking, not always, but also are influential in their communities as far as being able to be more involved in just selling homes, involved in the marketing trends or coaching or helping. You have to really want to give back as well. So it is a fun group to be involved in. It was started by Christian Völkers about 20 years ago in Europe, and just came to America in 2014. And now we're over 100 agents in America in that group, a little over 200 worldwide. But generally speaking, we meet together at least every 6 months, many times every quarter, and we share ideas, market trends, success stories, and we get opinions of people that are specialists in either the banking or Instagram or whatever the world is. and we're supposed to bring that information and share it with our offices. So it's also a calling. It's an expectation that we will share what we learn. And I think right now there is there's an adjustment period across the entire world, and I personally in my lifetime have never seen something that globally everybody could relate to at the exact same moment in time,
Sure.
Yes,
the way
indeed.
this is. And however, our European counterparts that have been way ahead of Engle Völkers in America are experiencing this much worse in a lot of cases so far than we are for their respective communities. When you start looking at some of the percentages and so forth, and also understand how real estate's done there, because real estate is not done in Europe through Zillow or any of those things. They don't have that over there. And in most cases, Engle Völkers is the MLS. So they experience real estate through community, which really right now is completely closed off. So where we're talking about doing video calls like this and really expanding upon that with our database, they are really still struggling even understanding what Google Hangouts or Zoom is.
Oh, wow.
in many markets and regions. So what we're really trying to do is kind of come together as one. And I've never seen it better than it is right now, as far as it doesn't matter what country you're from, what city you're from. Everybody is very eager, like a sponge, to learn, to adapt. And I tend to find that our industry is one of those very strong adapter groups. So that survival mentality is really coming together right now to share ideas. One of the success stories I heard recently was an agent that every morning wakes up and calls one or two people in Europe. And this agent is in Scottsdale. And she wakes up really early and she calls one or two agents in Europe just to check on them. Say, hey, I know you're with Engle Völkers. I follow you on social media. I know things are really hard in Italy. Is there anything out here that we can do for words of encouragement? Maybe you just need a voice to hear. And it ends up going into a discussion on how different real estate is and how caring that person is, that this person took the time to call. And it's basically a relationship for life from that point forward, is what she's starting to experience already. And those stories, I think, are the stories that we in private office are trying to share with each other, because reaching out to others, whether they're clients, other agencies, other brokerages, friends, family, that reach out right now, and that ability to communicate what is happening in our different areas or different industries, I think is really desired and craved. So being able to kind of to fulfill that, and having a group behind us like private office that's really helping share that. And I'll take it further. Anthony hit, watching Anthony's communications and his coffee talks and the amount of people in corporate checking on our managers and offering support, even while they were forced to be moving out of their offices. I can tell you the behind the scenes was so much reach out, and they were more worried about us than we should have been more worried about them, frankly. And it's really, I've been on a lot of calls the last 2 weeks with people from they're very agnostic calls. So it didn't matter if it was Compass or Sotheby's or Berkshire. We're all bonding together right now. And on those calls, I've learned that there's just very few groups as lucky as we are right now to have the communication that we're even getting, and the desire and drive to help keep us going. It feels like everyone else is hunkering down and hiding a little bit. So it's interesting to watch.
So,
Absolutely.
So on a macro level, going by what you said, hunkering down, are you seeing business at a standstill outside of the US? And two-part question, what are you seeing and what's happening locally in your market in Park City?
Yeah, I've been lucky to be on a lot of calls with significant bankers. Calls that involved like Tom Barrett, the head of Colony Capital, or the head of real estate in Goldman Sachs. Different calls, even somebody from Johns Hopkins that is kind of running their relations division on COVID-19. And there's a lot of different similar opinions. is what I'll call them, where a lot of people in the investment world view this very differently than a recession.
Mm.
The recession word is being thrown around, depression word is being thrown around.
Yep.
And technically speaking, when you have so many restaurants and hotels closed, you have less money being spent. So of course there's a recessionary effect. There's no question there.
Certainly.
But most recessions have come from high interest rates or mortgage-backed security issues, or where banks were over leveraged, or I'm sorry, under leveraged. So most recessions were caused by some form of a real estate issue. And this is not one of those recessions. And more importantly, this is unique in that it's more like a natural disaster than it is the Lehman Brothers crash, for example. When the Lehman Brothers crash occurred, the Wall Street, everything, it was eerily similar. I was in New York City the day after Lehman Brothers, and I was in Nobu that night. And I was the only table in Nobu that night where even 2 months earlier, it would have been a 2-week wait.
Wow.
And the streets were empty. It was eerie. No one knew when that would end. And I think somebody said it yesterday on one of these calls best. Nobody knew when it ended. There were so many people that started buying real estate and investing in stocks in 2010 and 11, and they had these massive run-ups and massive profits, but yet a lot of people weren't willing to call the recession over till somewhere in 2013 or 14.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is a little different in a couple ways. One, we understand and understand social distance is working. We don't know what measures, either greater or lesser than, that will come in our future, but we do know that there's a curve to this. And more importantly, we know that it is affecting certain industries differently than other industries. So for example, you don't want to be invested in restaurants or hospitality or retail right now, right?
No.
However, what if you're invested in Zoom meeting, or what if you're invested in Google Hangouts?
Talking about that earlier today.
How about Amazon and owning Whole Foods and all the things they have? It's like investors today that made money investing know how to invest. Mm-hmm. And they are moving their money around at a rapid rate. And so what's interesting about this is when that curve flattens, inventories will be low because less people are comfortable putting their homes on the market. And there will be people with money, but there will also be people that have to sell because of their personal struggles. Yeah. And so it's going to create a very transactional market. I like to quote Mark Cuban best. His speech the other night is, he said, this is going to be one of the biggest capitalism examples in world history. And, so there's a lot of different beliefs of what that's going to look like. But so there are still people buying because of it. And what I've seen is a change in buying habits in that. So for example, New York City, Miami, Italy, especially in northern Italy and places like Rome and Paris, Barcelona, you are seeing nothing happening. You're seeing it frozen, completely frozen. However, in the mountain towns, we are seeing people look for big, large, private, gated, secure homes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they're coming from those cities, and they're coming on their private jets, and they are coming at a rapid rate, and they are looking for that privacy, and they are thinking, hey, I don't know if this is going to last 2 years or 2 months, or if it's ever going to happen again, but I want a place where I can kind of be self-contained with a well, with solar. All those things are suddenly more popular than they have been. So we're seeing that. We're seeing residential sales continue, because people need to buy and sell homes for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. And we are seeing people that, especially in North Bay, in San Francisco, we're seeing people that were waiting for price adjustments for so long mm-hmm. that they're going to refuse to fall away. They've been waiting for years for this so-called recession, and now all of a sudden we have price adjustments. There are buyers. on some of these homes.
Yes.
But let's look at the flip side. Let's look at condos, where you have to go into a building and push a button on an elevator and touch a button someone else has touched while you're standing with other people on this elevator going up to your condo. There are economists that believe condos in resort towns specifically will struggle. Park City, we've seen almost every single condo transaction we hold cancel over the past 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it is holding true here. We're seeing our big stuff. We're seeing land deals where people are building their McMansions. We're seeing private secure homes sell, but the condo deals or the investment properties are canceling as fast as the other sales are happening. So I think we're going to have a little shift. You know, in Europe, I think it's much of the same from the people I'm talking to, in that there's areas of the country that are deemed safer that people are moving to if they have the money to move. And then there are people that are selling because they need to sell, but also there's it's very different in different countries. Like in Sweden, more than 50% of the population lives alone, which is interesting. So their spread of disease is very small, because in Italy, for example, where your grandparents, you and your kids all live in the same household, and probably your grandkids, the spread was much greater. And so it's affecting the different communities in a different way, which is causing that's why they've had to close the borders, because there's people wanting to shift to wherever it seems the grass is greener.
Wow.
So I think it's going to be smart to look for those greener locations. I believe you guys are a prime example of open air and space, but yet close enough to major medical. You know, you don't want to be somewhere in the middle of, I won't name any states, but you don't want to be in the middle of some place that doesn't have any great medical places like Stanford and Berkeley and so forth. And yet being in the country and isolated, that's what I believe is going to be something people are looking for more going out of this.
Sure, that makes perfect sense.
Great insight, Paul.
Yeah, great insight. Thank you for the worldwide and local grasp on everything. That's really good to hear. And yeah, wine country, I mean, we've always said for decades that we are the best place to be because we have everything right around us, whether it's restaurants, wine, hotels, LA, the Bay Area, Tahoe, the beach. I mean, we really do have it all. You can feel like you're kind of secluded and private here, but yet you have everything right around you. So little pitch there for wine country. So Paul, what you were just talking about brings up a good question. You have a very affluent clientele, a lot of 1%ers of the world who have discretionary income and own homes all over the world, maybe even some own jets and yachts. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What kind of calls are you fielding and questions are you fielding?
It's interesting, you know, it's a complicated time to have money.
Sure.
I watched David Geffen's situation yesterday.
Yes.
So, you know, here's you know, I've had a chance to meet David, and he's as gentle and nice as it comes. You know, I understand the word tone deaf, or the term tone deaf, when they referred to his Instagram post where he was letting everybody know, here I am on my yacht. But the interesting thing is, for every person that got really angry about that, there was also somebody on the other side that was looking for that, meaning regardless of their income level, they seeing the greenest of grass can be inspirational to some and refreshing, you know, as we jokingly call it, real estate porn, watching these beautiful, amazing homes and so forth. I'm seeing a lot more interaction than I usually see, like on my Instagram post. In the course of a week, I'm averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 or 8,000 interactions on Instagram, and about another 5,000 on YouTube.
Powerful.
And so when you really start breaking it down, I'm seeing definitely the occasional person that's kind of like, oh my gosh, this is the wrong time to be displaying wealth. But I'm seeing a lot of people out there that are stuck in their apartment thinking, wow, that looks beautiful, thanks for sharing. So, and I think that is what I'm experiencing is with my wealthiest clients, is they're stuck wondering how they're going to be perceived. So they're really more so, they're quieter than I've ever seen them. So when they're coming to town, they want it completely private, off the grid. You know, they're which is easier to do now than usual, but it's still a point that's made. You know, I'm hearing the conversation more and more as to how self-contained it is. But I'll take it a little further back. For years, I've noticed this trend with the super wealthy. The super wealthy have always cared more about preparing for this moment in time.
Yes.
And it caught me off guard. I remember I was the first time that I realized I was at a money conference in kind of an investor, they call it the money show of all things, in Vegas. This is, I think it was about 5-6 years ago. And there were a lot of very wealthy private investors from Wall Street and with their private jets and all those wonderful toys. And the main topic of conversation was finding property that they could hide in one day when doomsday hit, that they could live in for years without ever needing anything from the outside. And at first I kind of laughed about it, like, okay, these guys are a little extreme, you know, and as it sat in, I started noticing a trend as I talked to more and more of my clients in that or friends in that price point, and start realizing that this is kind of like, there's a world that I'm not part of, you know, and that where a lot of these ideas have been shared back and forth for so long, and maybe that's why they have the money, maybe they have a better example of, or better ability to foresee some things like this. But I think this is a time where you're going to see even more of that. You're going to see, like, talking to the guys up in Montana, they've never seen so much activity as they're seeing right now. This is the busiest market they've ever had. So people finding ranches and people finding private properties, especially with wells and solar. I can't, you know, I can play both sides. I'm a little bit of a statistician. I'm a numbers nut, and the numbers do scare me, you know, just watching the multiple each day grow and what that means 30 days from now.
Yep.
But it's shocking to me, even last week, to see people purchasing $4 and $5 million 1-acre lots to build their $10 million homes. That is going to be a 4th or 5th home, and picking up the phone and saying, "Are you sure you want to proceed? You can still get your money back." And having that person on the other end of the phone saying, "Absolutely. By the time I've built this home, coronavirus will be long behind this." You know, so there's still the belief that real estate is a safer investment than the stock market. And there's a belief that it's a long-term investment and that you must make long-term decisions versus short-term decisions. So those are the factors I'm noticing.
That's really great insight.
Agreed.
Thank you so much for that. That brings up another good topic of conversation. We at Engle and Völkers are considered advisors, not agents. And you discussing what you just discussed really goes to show and prove that we are not agents. An agent is typically someone who is a salesperson looking to make a quick sale, to make a commission and move on to the next. Not relationship-based, it's transaction-based. So tell us a little bit of what that role is like for you right now, more than ever, being an advisor and not an agent.
Or salesperson. Yeah.
You got me really excited when you said that. You know, when I first moved over to Engle and Völkers and they called us advisors, you know, at first I thought about it and I kind of drifted towards the financial advisor side, right. and it felt like a title. And over the years that I've been with the company, I've realized more than I ever have just how important that word is. And it really, throughout this process, I found it more important than ever, you know, because I've had phone calls from people that say, "Okay, how do I play this? What is the postcard I should be sending right now that's going to make buyers buy and sellers sell?"
Wrong.
And I have to take a deep breath, and I find myself relying on our titles, you know, more than ever. And so to me, the advisor role, you know, I believe that there's nobody out there that should ever be sold. And I think right now that is more important than ever, to understand our role is to communicate, and our role is to get enough information to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
So digest what's out there, understand the difference between shelter in place in for the state of California versus Sonoma County versus Healdsburg in some cases. Park City, for example, has a very different, much more strict set of rules than our county and then our state does. So it's been challenging to make sure everyone's on the same page. So I believe as an advisor, it's our jobs to learn as much as we can about the new challenges and the new worlds we face, and be able to communicate that and advise honestly. Is this the right time to put your home on the market, or should you wait? Is this the right time to buy? What does the zero Fed rate mean when it comes to mortgages? Why does it not necessarily have anything good to do with each other? Being able to communicate all of that is super important. So yes, I love that word right now.
Yep, we do too, and we are all about it right now more than ever. We always have been. Actually, that's one of the, weirdly enough, that's one of the things that drew us to Engle and Völkers, is that word, because we have always said we're not salespeople. We've been saying this from the moment I've been licensed, the moment he's been licensed. We're not salespeople. I have nothing to sell you. I am here to have a relationship with you, which also might sound a little strange at times. But we are here to, like you said, advise and communicate and learn and grow with that person, not to make a quick commission check off of them and move on to the next. That's not what we're about. So we really love that about EV. So Paul, where do you see things when the shelter in place is lifted? Where do you see the market? Because like you said, the Fed chairman was discussing over the weekend, are we in a recession? No one really wants to say, yes, we are, or no, we aren't. Obviously, we are. We can't deny it. We are, and we're going to be. But the biggest point being made is we can't compare this to 2008, where it was, like you said, created by the real estate industry and the lending and the financial industry. So this is not comparable. Where do you think things will be when the shelter in place is lifted? And even further, where do you think things will be by the end of 2020 or early 2021?
This is our new norm, and I believe that we need to adjust to it as quickly as we possibly can. When Lehman Brothers crashed, the following year, there were agents that did really well in the real estate industry. I think by now a lot of us know the stats that in the worst year of real estate sales and the best year over the last several decades, there's only about a 10% gap. It's the amount of transactions each year are very, very similar, no matter what's going on. Yes, the prices can come down, and it can either be a buyer's market or seller's market. Sometimes the slowest market is neither, but there were still transactions being done, and those that were doing it had learned how to do short sales and foreclosures faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
And they adjusted and they adapted and they dove in and they created a business model around it, and they came out successful. And those that were still trying to do business the way prior were not so successful. But other examples of that are the slow adjusters to adding websites, those that were slow embracing social media. There's a lot of factors that I believe are going to be good things to come out of this, because now that you're forced to do business paperless, you're forced to become media agency. Forget learning social media. We are now media agencies more than we ever have been. Sellers are relying on us to broadcast their for sale property to all of the right channels, YouTube,
Literally.
Twitter. You guys are great on Twitter. There's so many different channels, and it's up to us to really be kind of that kind of ad agency that's helping decide what is the right media outlet and what is the right story to get the most exposure possible for that seller. So, we're forced into certain things, and I believe that there are those of us who are going to fight it, those of us who are going to be a little slower, and it might just be a little uncomfortable. I get that. But those that are embracing it, doing what you're doing right here, right now, will be doing transactions in the new future. The new future to me is, I can picture a scenario where we all go back to work in the real estate world in May or June. But I can't picture sales meetings the way we used to have them. You know, in Park City, for example, small room, 90 people, probably don't see that happening this summer. I don't necessarily see fans at baseball stadiums yet this summer. You know, I don't necessarily see, I see football being played in a very small crowd.
Yeah.
Restaurants that open will be much smaller. Going back to the what's going on in Sweden, you know, there's no lockdown in Sweden, and they have 10 million people in a very small amount of cases, and they allow restaurants, but they closed all the bars down. They do regular testing, and you know, people can go into the restaurants, but the tables are very far apart. So, you know, with the proper precautions and training and awareness, we're going to have a new world. And coming out of that, I believe clients will have, and agents will have gotten used to a lot more digital interaction. And as they get used to that digital interaction, at some point, they're still going to want to see that at home because they're going to be allowed to see that home again. But there'll be more done up front before that moment. You know, much in the way Zillow changed our market quietly, where people really did their shopping before they call their real estate agent, more so lately. And then they'd use us as their advisor. You know, so I kind of see that trend where we have the adjustment period over the summer, and it goes into the end of the year where we really start getting used to a new norm. And it starts separating those who are going to do business and not do business. And the business is going to be there. They're, you know, as they start bringing back the restaurants and shops, I don't know about the shops yet, but as they start opening things up again, where people feel a sense of normalcy, because we adjust fast as humans. So 30 days on lockdown is going to make the next 30 days with restricted restaurants feel like heaven. You know, so there will be a new norm, and as we establish that, the transactional rhythm will continue, because sadly there will be people that lost their jobs that have to sell. There will be people on the sidelines waiting for that opportunity, and it will kind of create a market there. We just have to really look at what is selling and what's not, and adjust as we go.
Something we're really fortunate with here in Sonoma County is, well, I shouldn't say fortunate. We're very unfortunate with our fire seasons and all of that craziness. But over the years, we have really gotten good here at Sonoma County with adjusting to the new normal, because every year, as we have a worse and worse fire and power outages, and we've kind of had our own shutdowns with power being turned off for a week at a time. So I feel like we in Sonoma County are going to pull through stronger than ever, because we've had to deal with this over the years. So I guess kudos to us here in Sonoma County, we'll pull through. So Paul, one last question before we end. I want to end on kind of a fun note. I am curious what you and Kate and Bowie have been binge watching. What are you guys into these days?
So I want to comment on your other statement too, because I think that's really important. I've thought about that a lot the last couple of weeks. You know, I just joined you guys. We had literally just joined Healdsburg when the first big wave of fires hit. And I remember trying to get up to your first sales meeting and seeing armed tanks on the road, you know, and keeping us out, you know, and then I kind of saw a similar wave go through Santa Barbara, you know, and horrible things happened down there. And then Napa as well. And, you know, I was amazed at how fast everything recovered. I mean, it still blows my mind. And I use it as an example of kind of what to have an example to lean on that tells me where we might be in 6 months or a year. And you guys are great examples of that. So I just had to say that. So binge watching, yes, we're definitely, I mean, strangely, I find myself busier than I was before this.
That's what we're saying too.
It's amazing, you know, because I used to live my week picking 2 or 3 offices that I had time to fly to and go to a sales meeting and meet agents. And when you have 32 offices, that means you can go months without seeing an office, unless you work Saturdays and Sundays too on, you know, for meetings. But now we can do 3 or 4 or 5 offices in a day. And I love it. It's like, I feel like I'm a sponge right now, because everyone has so much new energy flowing. Through these kind of moments, it challenges you. So I am a little obsessed with all of my learning. So I'm taking a lot of notes at night, but when I finally let go and say, okay, let's sit down and binge watch, we have been So I'm obsessed with Billions and Blacklist.
Okay.
We never watched Game of Thrones, never had time. So since it started, I think we're on season 3 now.
Amazing.
And
Get
yep, and then finally the what's it called? Ozarks. We just started season 3 of the Ozarks. So yep.
Nice. You guys are having fun and taking some time to enjoy one another. And tell us, our audience may not know, who is Bowie. Tell us about Bowie.
Bowie is, Bowie. I do have 4 kids that live with my ex, so they are kind of like in their quarantine, and I'm here, so we don't get to spend time together.
Sure.
So Kate and I's child is Bowie. Bowie is our Cavapoo, and he is definitely family, and he makes it fun. Yeah, he's not used to seeing me at home so much.
I'm sure. I was just going to say he's probably really enjoying all of his attention from Daddy.
Yes.
That's awesome. Good.
And so am I.
Nice,
Awesome.
nice. Thank you, Paul, so
Thank you,
much
Paul.
for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, and maybe we'll do another one here soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys. I love it.
Thank you.